So it's my honor to introduce Mark Taylor, who happens to be my business coach and mentor and friend. I've known Mark over 2 decades through an organization I'm proud to be a member of called Vistage. I'll let Mark share more about his background and what he'd like to say about Vistage. But out of the thousands of CEOs and hundreds of Vistage chairs around the world, Mark definitely stands out. I've received lots of different tips and coaching and insights and everything that's contributed to my business in a positive way through Mark. And that's just me, but there are thousands of others or hundreds of others who have benefited. And Mark, you won the COPE Award. Do you want to tell us what that is and tell us a little bit about you and Vistage?
Sure. Thank you, Charles. The COPE Award is Vistage's highest honor. I was the 35th recipient, and Vistage has been around since 1957 and probably out of 1,000 chairs. And it's given to the person, it's a lifetime achievement award for making a positive and lasting contribution to the entire community. And there's 45,000 members around the world. So it was really an honor to achieve that award. Both of my mentors, who I think you know, Bob Duncan, who's retired now, and Jeanette Hobson were COPE Award winners, are COPE Award winners. And I was just really honored to follow in their footsteps. And they were my mentors and coaches that really taught me what it was all about.
Yeah, I know them well, and they're extraordinary. So, one of the things I've really appreciated about you, Mark, is how you help leaders influence without. I'm going to just put this into the world. I don't know if you actually do this specifically, but my observation of you is that you help leaders influence their worlds, their businesses, their employees, what they do in their markets, in a non-authoritarian way, meaning, they might be the founder, they may be the CEO, they have the title, but I don't think, and I may be putting words in your mouth, that you are interested in coaching people from that standpoint. And say a little bit about that. But before you do that, I just want to see if we can align what you do and how you work with my work on enabling buying in a world of selling. And of course, as my coach, you've been hearing me talk about that for a long time. And I also feel that buyers appreciate when sellers influence versus telling them what to do or pushing for a sale. Where do you see the parallels?
I don't know if I ever told you this story, but I started in sales in 1973 was my first professional selling job. I mean, I sold, seeds door to door and things like when I was in the Boy Scouts when I was younger. But this was a job that was straight commission, door to door sales, selling fire alarms. Well, by 1974, I was recognized as one of the top 10 Vulcan fire protectors in the entire world. And I went to my very first convention. It was, one of my first trips outside of Michigan, where I'm from, and where you got to go on an airplane, and we went to Las Vegas. Our keynote speaker was a man by the name of Fred Herman. Now, Fred was pretty famous in the 60s and 70s. He's the author of this book, Selling is Simple, Not Easy, but Simple. And he told a story that I've never forgot. He was on the Mike Douglas show. And Mike Douglas says to him, Fred, you're known as the greatest salesperson in the world. Tell you what, sell me this ashtray. And Fred says, okay. What do you think you would need an ashtray for? And Michael says, well, I don't smoke, but I have people that come to my office and, I'd like to have them have a place to put out their cigarettes. And Fred says, I see. How how much do you think you'd pay for it? And Michael says, well, it's not a very nice one. I'd give you $5 for it. And Fred says, well, I guess I'll let you have it.
So I love that story, but there's a reason you told that story. So let's dig into that a little bit. Like, what in that story do you feel resonated with you, and how does that align in your mind with enabling buying in a world of selling?
When I think of sales and salespeople, and if I ask my members to talk about salespeople, they think of them as pushy. I mean, that was not pushy. It was really inquiring into a need. If he said there was no need at all, I don't know what he would have done. But if there's no need, there's no reason to offer. And I think it's solution based. So I think enabling selling in a world of buying is letting people buy, but I think it's our role, if we're in the role of a salesperson or in a sales way of being, is to ask questions to determine what somebody needs or wants. And then if they need it or want it and we have a solution that we can provide for them, to let them have it.
Love that. So let's think about the phrase enabling buying in the world of selling. So I'll give you my take on speaking with a lot of people in our world together, you and me and Vistage, but in the broader sense, pretty much everywhere I go, it's occurred to me, Mark, that people hear the first part, right? There's two parts. They hear enable buying and they go enabling buying and they go, wow, that's great. Let's make it easier for the buyer. And they don't hear the second part, or they don't focus on the second part. So I could easily have created this movement. I wrote my book about it. I've done all, my company practices this method. We could have just left off in a world of selling, but we didn't. We picked it very specifically. And so I want to give you some access to that because and I'll let you do you need to get that?
Oh, sorry. It's an old fashioned dial phone, and I don't know how to turn it off.
Maybe throw a pillow over it. So anyway, the two parts, right? Enabling buying, which is kind of, I think, very intuitive. And then when I ask people to think about in a world of selling, most people are like, I'm not really sure what that means. So what I'm talking about in that second part is, you go to business owners like we do, and we say they want us to help improve selling. And when we tell them about this enabling buying part, they sort of buy in at first. They love it. Oh yeah, it's a good idea. Make my buyers buy more, might buy better, etc. Sounds kind of philosophical, a nice thing to have. And then they get anxious. Now they need to make payroll. Now the pandemic hit and they're in trouble. And they come back to us and say, all that enabling buying stuff, that all sounds great on the back of a cereal box, but I have a business to run. I need to get people to produce and perform. And so we get into this inner world of selling, which is the numbers, the activity, the targets, the discipline. And so I'd love to put on the table, how do you kind of hold both of those things to be true at the same time so they're not mutually exclusive, meaning you help buyers buy better, but you also have to make your numbers, and one doesn't go at the expense of the other. So that's a long-winded way of setting you up for your observation.
So one of the reasons that I became one of the top 10 fire protectors when I was 18 years old was about, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks after I had provided this family with fire protection that lived in a mobile home. They had a fire. And the fire alarms that I provided them, that I enabled them to buy, saved the lives of the two of them and their three children. And they wrote a letter to the president of the company thanking them, saying that if I had never showed up that day, they would have certainly perished in a fire. And at that conference in Las Vegas, they gave me a badge that said, I saved lives for a living. And they gave me an award, the Vulcan Lifesaver Club Award, for being instrumental in the saving of human lives. And it was knowing that I made a difference every single day when I didn't feel like making any more calls or being more productive. I thought about people dying in fires, and I thought about that I made a difference and that I could make a difference today. And even today, 50 years later, our mission at Vistage is to increase the effectiveness and enhance the lives of our members. And I know every single day that I can make a difference in the conversations that I have. And when I think about my purpose, my why I do this, I'm willing to pick up the phone and be uncomfortable for a few seconds and talk to people and see if they're interested and if they're totally satisfied with where their business is, or if they want it to go to the next level, if there are any challenges or issues that they have that an unbiased board would be of value to them. And the ones that do see the possibility, the ones that want to grow to the next level, the ones that are open for learning, those are my members.
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that because as I was listening to you, you were very authentic, and I know you well enough that I'm not surprised that you have that perspective that you save lives and that what you do motivates you. You know, that's the bigger purpose. Um, but I'm going to challenge you a little bit. And here's where I'm going to go with the challenge. I think I'm going to make a statement that if we could have more employees in our organizations, especially on the front lines in sales, that operate in that way you just described, where I, as a leader, don't need to force them to focus because of the numbers. Like, you need to make 400 outreaches this month, and then that's going to get us 20 meetings. And then if we get 20 meetings, we'll get 3 proposals. And if we do 3 proposals, we'll get a deal. In that part, I don't hear any of Mark Taylor in any of that. What I hear is a manager expecting Mark Taylor to operate on an activity level. And almost nowhere am I hearing a leader in that context talk about what gets you up in the morning, Mark? Like, what? So here's my challenge. How do you, because you do it really well, but I think people would really love to learn, how do you help business leaders and their leadership teams, including their sales teams, their leaders of their sales teams, enable that passion, that whatever you want to call it, that you described? How does that happen?
You know, we did a course together, must have been 15 years ago, called Tribal Leadership. And it was written by John King and Dave Logan. It was a best-selling author book in 2008. And one of their main concepts that they studied of what made the difference between companies that succeeded and companies that failed was that they had a noble cause. All that. So the way that I work with leaders is I help them discover their noble cause, because I find that, you know, most people aren't familiar with their why or their noble cause. You know, Simon Sinek with start with why. And if you don't have a why as a salesperson or as a CEO, what are you left with? You know, crack the whip and make 100 cold calls every single day because I told you so. I don't think that works in today's world.
Beautiful. Tell us about some of the other work you're doing. I know you're engaged in that world of performance, and so I know you have so many good things to offer. Tell us a little bit about what that is, so people can have an opportunity to learn more.
I think that the reason that I was chosen for the COPE Award was the work that I've done with Positive Intelligence, which was another best-selling book. I learned about positive intelligence in 2020. In fact, March the 13th was Friday the 13th in 2020. And I woke up that day in a solid sweat. I mean, my pajamas were dripping wet. You could have wrung them out. Now, I meet with 80 CEOs and leaders a week, and you know how you kind of know who gave you a cold when you get a cold?
Yeah.
I had a guest that came from Westchester, which was the hotbed of COVID. And that was the day that COVID became real. Friday the 13th, March 2020, was the day that our mayor, de Blasio, shut down the city and said it was real. That our governor, Andrew Cuomo, at that time said statewide, only if you have essential work can you go to work. So I was pretty sure I had COVID because I was sweating, but you couldn't go see a doctor if you remember. You couldn't go to the hospital unless you had a temperature of over 103.
This is pre-vaccination and everything, right?
This was the very first case. I mean, New York was the hotbed of where it all started from.
Right.
And the problem was I didn't have a thermometer. Do you have a thermometer? I mean, and you couldn't buy a thermometer. They were sold out at CVS, Duane Reade, even Amazon, you couldn't get one. So they wouldn't see me. So I'm sweating and I'm in pain and I had huge back pain and I thought maybe I had a kidney problem. So they agreed to see me for a kidney problem. But I didn't have a kidney problem. I had COVID. So for 6 weeks, I had no sense of smell, no sense of taste. I was laying in bed and I found this book on my shelf that I hadn't read called Positive Intelligence, how to capture more of your true potential, how 90% of us never reach it. And we have these 10 saboteurs that stop us. And I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting. I signed up, I did their 6-week course. And then I did their 1-year training certification program and became the first Vistage Chair certified in positive intelligence. And I gave it to all of my members during COVID. And I mean, the testimonials that I got, it was the biggest difference that I think I ever made. Andrew Singer, a managing partner of a law firm who you know, said it was the single most important thing that he'd ever done in his life, both personally and professionally. People were able to get through that fear, that uncertainty, that challenge of those times because of mental fitness, which is what it teaches. And I believe this is true for all salespeople. What stops us from being all that we can be? And it's these saboteurs, that inner critic, those voices in our head that are saying, you're not good enough. Why bother? Don't make another call. They're just going to say no again. You're a loser. Forget it. Just push it away. You'll never be good enough. All those are the voices that I think stop us. And the alternative is to learn mental fitness, which is a lot of mindfulness, learning how to calm your nervous system down. It's scientifically based, and to incorporate some sage powers. And sage powers are, the part of our brain that are on the right side that allow us to really get in touch with the ability to explore, the ability to navigate, the ability to negotiate, the ability to be creative, to have emotional resilience, to move into action with that calm, clear-headed focus. And I think that's what's required to succeed in sales, is that calm-headed, clear focus on what your purpose is and being able to contribute and make a difference for others. And if you're coming from that place, you're going to make the calls without anyone telling you how many you have to make because you want to make a difference.
So true, Mark. I too took positive intelligence, and I can tell you, it was way after COVID. So it wasn't like a crisis that sparked me to do it. But I was definitely in a place where my business had hit a bump in the road, and I was getting up earlier and working longer, and I was just, bottom line, I couldn't get out of my own way. I think I was overthinking, overanalyzing, and listening to you describe your scenario and what you've done with positive intelligence and how you've helped people. It's true in my world, I was getting in my own way, and I remember there wasn't anything else I had done that had really pinpointed what you just described as saboteurs, things that literally stopped me. And in selling, you're dead on. I agree that when it comes to focusing on what's best for the buyer, focusing on add value, probably step one is get out of your own way. And if you can't get out of your own way, then, you know, selling and buying becomes effort and struggle and difficult. So that's really great. How do people learn more about that? Because I think that is really valuable.
There's a website called positiveintelligence.com, and you can take a free assessment to learn what your top saboteurs are. They offer a program that you can sign up for. I teach it. I'm doing a course right now for about two companies and about 25 different individuals, but I only do it 3 or 4 times a year. And I do it because it makes such a huge difference for the participants. And the one challenge that I would make to you, I don't think that it's get out of your own way, that you have a choice until you realize that you are in the way. And that's what I see is the biggest difference that it's made for so many people that have never done anything like this, is they begin to see that they have this inner voice, this inner critic, this judge that's constantly criticizing either themselves, or they're judging others, or they're judging the circumstances, and they're deciding this is bad. And it's like, Henry Ford said, if you think this is good or bad, you're right.
Yeah, that's so powerful. It's like if you knew you were in your own way, you could at least say, "Okay, I'm in my own way. I have a choice to do something about it." But you have no choice when you don't know you're in your own way. That's really beautiful. One more question, and then maybe we could start wrapping up because I know your time is valuable. But something I'm really working on lately is leadership at scale, meaning everything we've said when it comes to inspiring. And of course, my swim lane is revenue. So I focus on that area specifically. But to generate revenue, you have to involve the entire organization, marketing, operations. There's a long story why, but I won't go into that. But it's great when you're working in a small team. You can get in a conference room and you can make a statement, issue a vision, and people go, got it, and we can pivot, and tomorrow or this next day we can go execute. Tell us a little bit about some of the bigger companies you work with where leadership is maybe 3 levels or more away from those people in the front line. They can't get them in a conference room because there's 2,000 of them selling. You can't get that. You could do a town hall, you could do a webinar, but I want you to help us with your own experience understand, what do you say to people who one of their biggest challenges is, how do I get the secret sauce, the mission, our value proposition into the mouths of the people that are speaking with the ones that matter most, our customers, our buyers?
I think this is a great question, Charles. I don't know if you saw the top stories in LinkedIn last week, but the number one story was that latest Gallup survey found that middle managers' engagement levels are lower than they've ever done before. Companies break in the middle. So when you're talking about larger companies that are 3 levels down, if you don't have those middle managers engaged, your culture is going to fall apart. In fact, I just wrote an article about this that'll be published in LinkedIn tomorrow. I don't know when this podcast goes, but you look me up on LinkedIn. And it really goes back to what we learned in tribal leadership. The companies that I've seen that are really successful, let me give you an example. Do you know Dan Rutenberg, the CEO of Spear Physical?
Yep, love him.
He started with Vistage when he had like 20 employees, and now he has over 1,000 employees. He's been recognized not once, but twice as the top physical therapy company in the entire United States. I've been going to Spear for years, and
I've been
to like maybe 8 or 9 different offices. And every single one you go into, the people are energetic, they're positive, they're happy, there's an energy there. You feel like they pay personal attention to you, they call you by name, they take such great care of you. I mean, that's the culture that he's created, but he's done it by involving his regional vice presidents, his regional managers, his area directors. He's invested in their training. He's put them through Vistage. He has more people in Vistage than I think any one of my other members. And they realize, number one, that he cares about them to invest in their development. And number two, he sees that at Spear, it's all about the leadership. And that's what you have to do. The leadership is really at the field level. And unless you get each of those middle managers involved and it comes from the top and it goes to the senior managers and it goes one level down, one level down, one level down, and they're all enrolled in the difference in the mission in that noble cause, that's how you scale a company.
I love it. So valuable, Mark. I got so many ideas just from this one conversation, but this last piece you gave me is something that a lot of my clients, because we're working with some pretty large organizations, and they don't get into. I mean, it's important, but we're not talking about how to improve salesmanship. We're not talking about how, at least they're not talking about how do I run a meeting effectively, get more proposals. They kind of leave that to, like you said, the middle managers, et cetera. But their big struggle is to go right back to where we started in this conversation. How do I have more Mark Taylors in my 10,000 sales people who have that passion, that they're passionate enough to wear a badge that says I save lives. That's what I want. So Vistage is a great place to enable that. So as we wrap up, first of all, thank you, Mark, because I do know you're very busy. You have a lot going on, but just give us a final word or two about where you get inspiration. Like that could be personal, professional. What are sources that you like to pass on for your inspiration?
You know, I was a Vistage member. I joined Vistage as the CEO of my own company in 1995. The way I found out about it was my CPA told me, hey, you know, have you ever heard of this organization called Vistage where you spend a day a month working on your business versus in your business? I said, a day a month. I'm working from 7 in the morning until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. I have a wife and 3 kids. I don't have a day a month for them. What are you, nuts? I don't have time for go to a meeting all day to work on my business. And he said, Mark, that's the very reason why you should go. You're too much in the weeds. I thought, maybe he's right. So I went to a Vistage meeting, and ironically, it was all about how to scale your business. And what I learned was that 96% of all businesses in this country do less than $1 million in revenue. And I've checked that statistic even today. That's still true. And I was shocked because I was already doing more than $1 million in revenue. I thought that, you know, you read the Wall Street Journal, you read Fortune magazine. I thought those were CEOs. I didn't even think of myself as a CEO. And less than 0.5% hit 10 million in revenue. And that's what I was striving to hit. And that speaker told us that the reason why you don't hit 10 million in revenue is very predictable. You're doing it all yourself. You don't have an executive team. You need to learn to empower and hire an executive team and bring people into the room that are smarter than you are. And I thought, that's me. So I went to my wife. I joined Vistage. I said, I need an executive team. You know, that money that we've been saving for our kids to go to college, can I borrow that and hire a vice president of sales, a vice president of admin, and a vice president of finance? And she said, yeah, she trusts me. And I did. And our company grew to become the 58th fastest growing company in this state. So I know how hard it is to be a CEO. I know how hard it is to run a company. I know what it's like to sweat over whether or not you're going to make that next payroll or not, or how the cash flow is going to work, or when an event like COVID happens, or Y2K in my time, or the recession of 2008, 2009. I know what those external events can do and how to lose sleep over it. And I know that Vistage makes a difference. it's not about me. It's really about a group of other CEOs that are unbiased, that have no agenda, that are there to help one another grow and become better. And it's in that room that the wisdom exists that really makes a difference for our members.
Wonderful. Well, I've been in rooms like that, and I've certainly you've managed our room, you've led us. So I'm very grateful for you being in my life and being my coach. I couldn't wish for a better one. So thank you. I think it's time that we should wrap up. Any last word, Mark, before we go?
Thank you for the opportunity to share this. I've loved you since the day that I've met you. When we would, I would go to your office when I was first becoming a chair, and you would talk to me when nobody else I thought would talk to me. And we would have long conversations about the things that we have in common and the training that we've done, like the Landmark Forum and different sales training. I know you sold copiers, and I sold copiers in some of our first sales jobs, and I'll never forget you for that. And you'll always be in my heart.
Thank you, Mark. All right. Well, let you go and to be continued. Be well.
All right, you too. Live long and prosper.
Okay, let me hit the record button. That was excellent.